5 ways to handle people who don't respect you. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and still felt that sting inside? Not because they shouted at you, but because of one small sentence soft enough to sound harmless, yet sharp enough to make you feel disrespected. An interruption halfway through your thought, a quiet smirk, a sarcastic comment that cuts like a thin blade. You stay silent, you smile to move on, but in your head, their words repeat like a small scratch that burns deeper each time you think about it. I know that feeling. I have lived in it. I used to be the one who always gave in, tried to understand others, and wanted to keep the peace. I thought I was doing the right thing. Until one night after a long meeting filled with condescension, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling and asked myself why they felt they could talk to me like that. Then I realized it wasn't that they were too cruel, it was that I had taught them how to treat me. When you stay silent out of fear of offending, when you smile to avoid conflict, people learn that they can keep crossing your boundaries. Once, then twice, then forever. Some people don't need to yell. They only need a tone, a look, or a phrase laced with meaning. And that's when you start doubting yourself. Am I being too sensitive? Or am I just imagining things? But the truth is, you are not imagining anything. You are feeling something very real, the absence of respect. And what hurts even more is not knowing what to do about it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That sentence sounds simple, but it took me years to understand. Respect does not come from demanding it, but from staying calm when tested. Others may look down on you, but they cannot make you lose your dignity unless you allow it. Modern science says that when you are insulted, your brain reacts as if you are in danger. Your heart races, your breath shortens, your body prepares to strike back. But if you take a deep breath and stay still for a few seconds, the rational part of your brain takes over, and in that moment you stop reacting and start leading yourself. In this video, I will share with you 5 simple and practical ways, no fancy techniques or complicated philosophy, to deal with people who do not respect you while keeping your calm self-respect and that quiet presence that makes others adjust themselves. These are not moral lessons. They are things I have lived through, mistakes I have made, and lessons I have learned the hard way. Every way I share came from when I lost my composure and paid for it with regret. So if you are tired of enduring, if you have blamed yourself for not responding fast enough or for being too kind and ending up disrespected, stay until the end. I promise by the time this video ends, you will have simple yet powerful ways to remain calm in front of anyone without turning cold or numb. Sometimes strength does not lie in what you say, but in the moment you choose to say nothing. Way 1. Pause before you react. Sometimes what hurts you is not what others say, but how you respond. A mocking tone, a sarcastic look, or a cold message can make your blood boil, and you want to strike back immediately to prove that you are not someone to be disrespected. But when the anger fades, you reread what you said, remember how you reacted, and realize you became no different from them. I used to be like that. I once believed that if I stayed silent, people would see me as weak, and if I didn't respond, they would look down on me. So I let anger lead the way many times. I said things I did not truly mean, and I felt nothing but emptiness in the end. I didn't defeat anyone. I only lost to myself. After years, most people who make you lose your calm never really want to talk. They want to pull you down to their level. They need your reaction to feel powerful. And once you fall into that trap, they have already won. But if you pause, take a deep breath and look at them silently, you become the one in control. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can make you angry, realize that you have allowed it." That quote does not tell you to tolerate disrespect. It reminds you that you always have a choice. You can burn or you can stay still. Once I was in a meeting where someone kept interrupting me. Normally I would have jumped in, raised my voice, and tried to take back the attention. But that day I said nothing. I just sat still, looked straight without frowning, without smiling. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Their voice started to slow, then falter. The room went quiet. They looked down and took notes and didn't interrupt me again. In that moment, I understood the power of pausing. No words, no argument, only calm presence, and you reset the order of the room. Modern science says the same thing. When you are insulted, the amygdala, the brain's emotional center, activates instantly, pushing you to react, attack, or defend. But if you stop for just 3 seconds and take a deep breath, that signal shifts to the rational part of the brain, the place that allows you to choose your response consciously. One breath may seem small, but sometimes it is the thin line between calm and regret. Epictetus once said, "We are not harmed by what others say, but by how we respond to it." I understood that more deeply when a close friend told me that I had changed and had become colder. Usually I would have defended myself and tried to explain. But that day I asked, "Why do you think that?" He went silent. He had nothing more to say. The conversation ended, but what remained in me was peace. I did not need to prove or explain anything. When you learn to pause, you begin to see clearly which words deserve your attention and which are just noise. You realize that not every act of disrespect deserves a reaction. Some only need a calm look, and people will correct themselves. Next time someone says something that stirs you, do not react immediately. Take a deep breath. Feel the heat spreading through your body, but do nothing. Look at them and let silence do its work. At first it will be hard, it will feel like swallowing fire. But slowly you will see that the anger fades faster than expected. And when it fades, you will discover something profound yet straightforward. True strength is not in how you react, but in your ability to delay that reaction. Reaction is what they want. Calm is what they fear. And when you know how to pause, you are not just keeping the peace, you are keeping yourself. The one who pauses is not weak. They know what is worth stepping toward and what should be left in silence. But sometimes silence alone is not enough, because there will be moments when you must speak. Not to win, not to prove, but to draw your boundaries softly, clearly, and strong enough to make others understand that they have gone too far. I used to think that silence was enough, but then I realized some people will never stop unless you say something firm. The question is, how do you speak without losing your composure and without losing yourself? How do you make others feel your limits while keeping your inner peace? And that is the second lesson I want to share. Speak less, but make it count. Way 2. Speak less, but make it count. Reaction is what they want. Calm is what they fear. And when you know how to pause, you are not just keeping the peace, you are keeping yourself. The one who pauses is not weak. They know what is worth stepping toward and what should be left in silence. But sometimes silence alone is not enough. There will be moments when you must speak, not to win, not to prove, but to draw your boundaries softly, clearly, and strong enough for others to realize they have gone too far. I used to think that silence was enough. But then I realized some people will never stop unless you say something firm. The question is how to speak without losing your composure or yourself. How can you make others feel your boundaries while keeping peace within? And that is the second lesson I want to share. Speak less, but make it count. I used to be the kind of person who tried to explain everything. When someone misunderstood me, I would talk, justify, and try to prove I was right. I believed that the clearer I spoke, the more respect I would gain. But the more I spoke, the more exhausted I became. Because the truth is, those who have already decided not to respect you do not need logic. They only need your reaction. They do not listen to understand. They listen to argue. And when you speak too much, you only give them more material to use against you. Even when spoken with good intentions, your words can be twisted, cut, or used as weapons. I realize that sometimes the strongest way to speak is to speak less. One short, calm, decisive sentence carries more weight than 10 minutes of explanation. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Let your speech be brief, precise, and calm." He did not write that for others, but as a note to himself to balance reason and serenity in every word he spoke. I learned this lesson once during an argument with a co-worker. He kept mocking, throwing sarcasm at every line, and I almost snapped. But I paused, remembering past mistakes. Instead of defending myself, I said, "I understand your point." Then I stayed silent. No sarcasm, no defense. The air in the room shifted. He stopped talking. For the rest of the meeting, he didn't attack me again. Silence that follows a short sentence confuses people the most. Because they have nothing left to hold on to, they cannot twist your words and drag you into the argument they want. When you speak less, you force them to face their own words. It becomes a mirror. And sometimes that reflection is enough to make them realize their mistake. People often think silence means doing nothing. But in truth, silence is an intentional act. It takes confidence not to explain, and calmness not to win. A truly mature person does not prove their worth through words. They show it through tone, steadiness, and quiet certainty in their eyes. Psychology also shows that people tend to trust those who speak less, but clearly, rather than those who talk much, but vaguely. A slow voice, short sentences, and a steady gaze communicate self-control. And that self-control is what earns respect, even if unspoken. I once had a friend who was a master at this. He never argued, never rambled. When someone said something absurd, he would look, smile, and say, "Maybe." Then he would turn away. No irritation, no sarcasm. And strangely, the other person usually went quiet, perhaps because they could sense that nothing they said could shake him. From that I learned that when you speak less, your words carry more weight. Every sentence you say carries the energy of clarity. Seneca once said, "Not everyone who talks much speaks well, and not everyone who stays silent is weak." That line sounds simple, but it took me years to grasp its truth. Silence is not avoidance. It is refusing to lower yourself. Speaking less is not a lack of thought. It is maturity that no longer needs to persuade. The next time someone tries to drag you into a meaningless argument, try saying less. "I understand." Or, "Let's stop here." Then, stay quiet. At first it will feel strange, but soon you will feel lighter. Because instead of trying to make others understand, you are learning to understand yourself. You stop living to be right and start living to be at peace. Eventually you will realize that some answers need no words, some victories need only calm, and sometimes silence itself is the loudest way to say, "I know my worth." When you speak less but make it count, people stop seeing you as someone they can pull into their chaos. They step back, and they begin to listen, not because you spoke, but because you no longer needed to. But there will be times when you see that even after you stay calm and speak less, some people still do not change. They keep mocking, keep pushing, keep testing your limits. At that point, what you need is no longer words but steps. Not to run away, but to walk away before you lose your inner peace. Way 3. Leave early, without anger. Some people will not change no matter how calmly you speak or how little you say. They keep joking, mocking, and testing your limits as if they want to see how much you can take before breaking. And at some point you realize that silence is no longer the answer. At that moment you need not more words, but a step away. It is not a step born from anger, but from awareness. The awareness that you deserve a different space, energy, and respect. I used to think that walking away was weakness, that if I left, people would think I had lost. So I stayed. I endured. I tried to remain calm, to be the bigger person. But then I realized that some conversations do not need to end with victory or defeat. They need to end early so that peace can stay intact. Every minute you remain in a toxic exchange is a minute you push yourself further from the calm you worked so hard to build. Once I sat at dinner with a few acquaintances. The evening started light-hearted, but soon the jokes turned toward me. They laughed. I laughed it off. But as the laughter grew louder, I could feel the lack of respect in every sound. Usually I would have said something back or tried to defend myself to save face. But that night, I placed my chopsticks down, smiled, and said, "I need to leave early." Then I stood up. No anger, no bitterness, no extra words. The room went silent. On the way home, I felt no regret. In fact, I felt lighter. And the next morning, one of them texted me to apologize. Not because I said anything powerful, but because I left without anger. They had no way to blame me, no way to lower me. I had chosen not to participate in their chaos. And that is precisely what Stoicism teaches. Not every battle deserves your fight. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose carefully where you stop, for the soul also needs space to breathe." It sounds philosophical, but to me it is entirely practical. Staying calm is good, but knowing when to leave is better. Because sometimes walking away is the only way to preserve the best parts of yourself. I once had a friend who constantly complained, criticized, and found fault in everything I did. At first, I told myself I could handle it and needed to be patient. But the truth was, I left feeling worse every time I met them. One day I realized I no longer laughed the same. I no longer wanted to share anything real with them. That was when I understood any relationship that forces you to shrink to fit in is not worth keeping. So I chose distance, quietly. No drama, no cutting off. Just less. Fewer messages. Fewer meetings, until one day I realized I no longer missed it. Seneca once said, "Associate with those who make you better." The reverse is equally valid. Stay away from those who make you smaller. Sometimes you do not need to argue or blame. You stop showing up. Distance is the language of self-respect. You do not need to shout to make them realize they were wrong. You walk away and let them hear the echo of their own behavior. Some will call that cold or selfish. But no, keeping distance is not about hatred. It is about choosing peace. You can still wish them well. You can still be kind. But you no longer let them step too close. It is like gently closing a door, not to lock anyone out, but to protect what is calm within. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to stay and endure, but to leave at the right moment. If you are in a situation where someone constantly disrespects you, do not wait until you explode to walk away. Learn to recognize the signs early: the quickened heartbeat, the trembling voice, the urge to prove yourself. Those are signs that you are about to lose control. Step back, one step, 2 steps, or further if needed. Not to escape, but to protect the clarity within you. Leaving is not giving up. It is choosing not to hand someone else the power to disturb your peace. Anger only drags you down. Distance lifts you. People might say you have changed. They might call you cold. But only you know that you are calmer than ever, and that peace no one can take it away. One day you will look back and realize that you walked closer to yourself every time you walked away at the right moment. Because genuine respect begins when you protect your mind from places it does not belong. And once you learn to leave without anger, you will be ready for the next lesson: how to keep your distance without declaring it. Way 4. Keep your distance without announcing it. Once you learn how to walk away, the next thing you must know is how to keep your distance. Because walking away is only the first step to freedom, while keeping your distance is how you protect that freedom daily. I used to think that for others to respect my boundaries, I had to make them clear, declare them, and ensure people understood their place. But the older I get, the more I realize that mature people do not announce their boundaries, they live by them. Distance is not coldness. It is the quietest form of self-respect. It makes no noise, carries no bitterness. It is simply a space wide enough for you to breathe and for others to notice that they are no longer at the center of your life. I once tried to end a toxic relationship through long conversations, sincere explanations, and even arguments. But the more I spoke, the more I felt pulled back in. One day I stopped talking. I didn't declare separation. I stopped initiating messages, explaining, and showing up where I wasn't respected. And silently, distance formed on its own. The strange thing is, when you hold your distance without announcing it, everything around you begins to shift. Those who once belittled you become uncertain. They no longer know what you think, nor can they control how you react. Your silence becomes a mirror, and that sometimes is more powerful than any argument. Seneca once said, "He who controls closeness controls pain." That is one of the essential secrets to peace. Distance is not meant to punish anyone. It is intended to help you see yourself clearly again. When you are no longer controlled by someone's words, looks, or reactions, you begin to hear your inner voice again. It's quiet, but it's real. And it tells you, not everyone deserves to be close. There is nothing wrong with that. In a noisy world, choosing fewer but deeper connections, fewer but more actual words, is the way of someone who has grown through pain. Modern psychology calls this an emotional boundary. It's not a wall but a fence, a soft, flexible, yet unmistakable line. You can smile and talk, but you do not allow anyone to cross into the space where they can hurt you. It's like opening your door to someone but still keeping the key in your hand. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, "Today I will meet people who are selfish, ungrateful, deceitful, arrogant, and dishonest. But I will not let them make me like them." That is distance. I once had an acquaintance who treated me like their emotional trash bin. Every time they were upset, they would come to me, vent, unload, and complain. I listened, comforted, and encouraged, thinking I was a good friend. But over time, I realized they only came to take, never to give. After every talk, I left feeling heavy and drained. One day I stopped. I didn't block them. I didn't cut them off. I just stopped initiating. A few weeks later, they disappeared from my life. No confrontation, no announcement, just silence, and within it, relief. When you know how to keep distance right, you no longer need to prove your strength. Your calm presence says it all. You start using your energy for those who deserve it, for relationships built on respect and reciprocity. And soon your life becomes lighter, more transparent, and more real. Some say, If you truly care, you won't create distance. But the truth is, only when you know how to keep distance can you care without losing yourself. Like tending to a fire, you can't put your face too close. You have to stand far enough to stay warm without getting burned. People work the same way. If someone constantly makes you explain yourself, apologize, or prove your worth, you are probably too close. Step back, not to hate but to see, not to retreat but to recover, because only when you are far enough can you see the whole picture, and only when you are calm enough can you see what truly matters. Keeping distance is not a barrier, it's a filter. Those who remain within that space are the ones who truly value you. Those who can't handle the quiet will remove themselves, and that's a blessing. Life doesn't need too many people. It only requires a few deep, accurate, and peaceful people to stand beside you. Remember, you don't have to announce your boundaries. People will feel them in how you live, how you stay silent, and how you choose when to appear and when to disappear. When you are calm enough, the world naturally knows where it cannot cross, and that is respect, not something you demand, but radiate. Way 5. Hold your head high without needing to prove. When you have learned to keep your distance, the final step is to move through this world with the posture of someone who no longer needs to be validated. That is when you hold your head high, not out of pride, but out of understanding that if you do not respect yourself, no one else can do it for you. I used to be the kind of person who apologized to keep the peace, even when I did nothing wrong. I used to shrug off disrespect and tell myself, let it go, it's not worth it. But the more I let go, the more others pushed. They did not see calmness in me, they saw weakness. Much later, I realized that holding your head high is not about showing superiority. It is about reminding yourself that you are worthy too. Once during a meeting, an older colleague deliberately tried to belittle me in front of everyone. His tone was light but full of hidden condescension. The room went silent. I felt my blood rise, my heartbeat quicken, my throat dry. In that moment I remembered Marcus Aurelius's words. If someone offends you, ask yourself, is it true? If it is, be grateful for the reminder. If it is not, smile. I took a slow breath, looked him straight in the eye, gave a slight nod, and continued speaking slowly, clearly, without defense. No anger, no lowering of my gaze. And strangely, the atmosphere in the room shifted. From that day on, he never spoke to me that way again. Not because I reacted harshly, but because I refused to lower myself. People don't respect you because of what you say. They respect you because of your posture. You don't have to raise your voice to prove your worth. You only have to stand tall, look straight, and speak little, and they will understand. Holding your head high is the expression of quiet strength. No one can teach it to you because it comes from within, from every moment you endured, from every time you rose without resentment. You cannot fake calmness because true calm only appears when nothing is left to prove. When you hold your head high, you are sending a silent message. I know who I am. And when you know who you are, the words of others lose their weight. Those who once looked down on you will feel uneasy because they can no longer reach you. They will call you arrogant, cold, detached. But in truth, you are simply calm. And calmness is something they cannot control. In modern psychology, this is called neutral confidence, a quiet, grounded form of self-assurance. It is not boastful, not forced, not dependent on approval. It is in the way you walk, the steadiness of your breath, the stillness in your gaze. A person with neutral confidence naturally commands respect. They do not threaten, they do not perform. They stand, which alone draws a line no one dares to cross. This is what the Stoic philosophers spent their lives mastering: how to be free in spirit without needing to prove it to the world. I once met an old security guard who stood at the company gate every morning. He didn't talk much, only nodded gently as people passed. But there was something powerful in that nod, an unshakable calm, as if nothing could disturb him. One day I asked, "How long have you worked here?" He smiled and said, "A long time. I used to get angry easily. Now I keep my head straight, my heart steady." It sounded simple, but I never forgot it. Because of that, I realized that is the essence of self-respect. Holding your head high is not arrogance, it is humble strength. You do not bow from fear nor rise from vanity. You stand at your actual height. And when you live that way, people can feel it. They may not say it, but they will start treating you differently. Not because you demand respect, but because you have changed the level at which they must see you. Seneca once said, "A person who values himself cannot be insulted." That doesn't mean you never feel hurt. It means you do not let the hurt define you. When someone tries to lower you, you may feel pain, but you never lose your inner straightness. You do not retaliate. You do not justify. You keep walking like someone passing through a noisy street. I know keeping your head high when surrounded by disrespect is difficult. There are days you want to disappear, times when you swallow your words to stay calm. But every time you choose stillness, you teach others how they are allowed to treat you. Every time you maintain your posture, you are laying another stone in the fortress of your self-respect. And one day you will notice people no longer dare to look down on you, not because they changed, but because you no longer stand where you used to. Holding your head high is not a technique, it is a habit. It begins in minor things, the way you enter a room, listen, and refuse a sarcastic remark without apologizing. Each small act whispers, "I respect myself," and when you do it long enough, the world will learn to follow how you treat yourself. Remember, when someone tries to put you down, you don't have to bow to prove you're not beneath them. Stand tall like someone who has learned the value of inner peace, because genuine respect never comes from the eyes of others, but from the way you look at yourself. And once you understand that, you will see the world around you grows quiet. You no longer need to argue. You no longer need to prove. You no longer need to make anyone understand you. You live calm, upright, walking through life as someone who has nothing left to prove. Respect begins with you. When I was young, I used to think I had to earn respect from others. I had to speak better, work harder, and prove more. I thought if I were good enough, people would treat me kindly. But then I realized that some people will try to bring you down no matter what you do, not because you are wrong, but because they cannot stand that you remain calm. That is a lesson everyone must face. You cannot force others to respect you. You can only live in a way that makes them unable to look down on you. And to do that, you must begin within. When you learn to pause before reacting, you keep control. When you speak less but with weight, you make others listen. When you leave early without anger, you protect your peace. When you keep your distance without announcing it, you decide who gets access to your inner world. And when you hold your head high without needing to prove, you turn respect into your natural state, not something you strive for, but something you radiate. Many people think calmness is weakness, but in truth, silence is the highest form of strength, because it shows others that you no longer control them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you remain calm within, the world cannot touch you." That is not just philosophy, it is the lived experience of those hurt, yet chose to rise again with kindness and discipline. I have been misunderstood, mocked, and disrespected. But I learned that retaliation does not make me stronger, it only makes me more like them. What made me strong was the day I chose silence without feeling weak. The day I walked away without needing to explain. The day I looked in the mirror, I said, I am still me, and that is enough. If you are still watching this, you too are tired of trying to keep the peace in a world that is not always kind. But remember, peace does not come from changing others. It comes from not letting them disturb what is inside you. They can speak and test, but only you decide who gets access to your mind. Respect at its deepest level is not how others treat you. It is how you treat yourself every single day. It is when you tell the truth, even when misunderstood, stay silent, even when provoked, and walk away from places that no longer deserve your presence. Seneca once said, "No one can despise you unless you allow them to." And that has never been truer. Every time you choose calm over reaction, you lay another stone in the fortress of your inner self. Each stone is built from discipline, self-respect, and the wisdom to know when to speak and stay silent. In the end, this lesson is not about others. It is about you. About who you choose to become when you are tested. About whether you can stay still enough not to lose yourself in the noise around you. Because respect, like peace, is not something anyone gives you. It is something you forge daily with a steady gaze, fewer words, and the courage to keep walking even when no one applauds. If this message resonates with you, write one word: respect. Please do not ask for it, but remind yourself that you already have it. And if you are on a journey to build peace, discipline, and self-mastery, subscribe to Sovereign Stoic. Every day I share real stories, not distant philosophy, just simple ways to master your mind in a noisy world. Together, we will learn to live slower, think deeper, and stand steady through every storm.